It is Saturday morning. The house is quiet. You are the only one here. But the silence in this house sounds different from what silence used to sound like. It is not the absence of sound. It is the absence of a specific future. The house was supposed to get louder. You can feel the exact shape of that specific silence, the silence of a canceled future. You walk from room to room and the rooms feel different than they did. Here is what no one tells you about grief and silence. Your nervous system was preparing for noise, for a specific, particular noise. When a prepared nervous system does not receive what it was preparing for, it stays on alert. It keeps listening for the sound that was supposed to come. That is why the silence in this house is not the same as ordinary quiet. Wait, I need to say the hardest part of this before we go further. The silence is not only loss. The silence is also where they still live. That space did not disappear when they did. That space is still here. And the silence is what you hear when you stand inside that space and realize. That is an unbearable specific grief. Not abstract loss, concrete, physical. Here is what grief researchers have found about the human experience of prepared space is that the brain treats the prepared space, the nursery, the room, the plan. The relationship was real. The space that was made for it was real. You are not grieving an abstraction. You are grieving a room, a silence. And the reorganization happened inside you, inside your body. Your body still moves differently through this house. You still notice things. That is not pathological. That is what happens when a body has already begun to. Here is a thing that helps. Not cure, not end, but help. Name the silence. Out loud in the room. Say, this is the sound of what? Naming does not fix, but naming prevents the silence from becoming something formless and impossible. Formless grief is harder to carry than named grief. Name it. Stop. Right now, in whatever room you are in. Notice the silence. The sound of a love that was already building a house inside your house before. That love is still building. It does not have a destination anymore. Here is what grief therapists who work with bereaved parents describe about the experience of. The house becomes a kind of evidence, every room a record of what was. The kitchen where you imagined feeding them. The hallway where you imagined watching them learn. The living room floor where you had already started to think about how you would. Those imaginings were real. They were a real part of you. And now the house still holds the marks of that rearrangement. The feeling is not delusion. The feeling is accurate. The house was changed. You were changed. And the silence is what you hear when you stand in the changed house and. That is the specific unbearable grief of domestic space after pregnancy loss. But it deserves one. And you deserve to have someone say, yes. There is a woman, it is a Saturday, she is walking from her kitchen. She has done this circuit 11 times this morning. Kitchen, hallway, living room, kitchen, hallway. She does not know why she keeps doing it. Her body knows why. Her body has not been told what her mind already knows. Her body is still preparing. When she finally sits down on the couch, she puts her hand on the cushion. She is not performing grief. She is not being dramatic. That is not madness. That is love with nowhere to go. You are not the only one who walks circuits in a too quiet house on Saturday. You are not the only one who has sat in a room and felt the. You are not the only one whose body is still listening for something the mind. That listening is not failure. That listening is a body that was already fully prepared. Here's what the research on silence and grief reveals. The absence of expected sound is one of the most physiologically distinct grief experiences documented. It is measurable. The nervous system response to anticipated sound that does not arrive is. In other words, your body is not imagining things. Your body is responding to a. The expectation was built on love. The silence is what the expectation meets when love. And here is what that means for how you can begin to live inside the. The silence is not the enemy. The silence is the evidence of something that was. You can learn to inhabit it differently, not by filling it, but by standing in it and saying, "This is the silence of someone who is coming." Here is a small and very specific thing that bereaved parents have described helping. Spend 5 minutes in the room that was made for them, not to be sad, just to say with your body by being in the room. The room does not need to be changed. The room does not need to stay. What needs to happen is simpler than either of those options. The room needs to. Saturday mornings are hard because there is no structure, no task. On hard Saturday mornings, give yourself one small thing to do that names the love. Light a candle. Write their name somewhere. Say it out loud in an empty room. Not because these things fix anything, because they are small acts of loyalty to someone. And loyalty in grief is not about grand gestures. It is about the small daily. The ones no one sees. The ones you do alone. The circuit walked 11 times. Those private acts are a form of love that the world does not see. They are the sound of a love that is still here, still active. Your baby was here. They were already part of the way this house moved and the silence you hear now is not nothing. The silence is the exact sound. That space does not disappear. It does not need to be filled with something else. A room that holds the sound that never came and holds it gently. Your baby's name deserves to be spoken in this house, not just thought, but spoken. Write their name in the comments below. Tell us which room you feel them most. Whatever you write, someone sitting in their own too quiet house right now will feel. If someone you love is sitting in a house that sounds different than it used, they may have been waiting for someone to say, "The silence is real." Tonight you are allowed to walk the circuit as many times as you need. You are allowed to put your hand on the cushion next to you and leave. The house is quiet, but the love that made the house ready for them. It is in the room that was painted or planned or imagined. It is in you, the one who is still listening. You have been doing this, living in this house, with this silence. And the fact that you are still here, still listening. The silence in this house is the sound of love that arrived before it had.